And so the number one thing you have to do is let them know before you get to that point. If at any point this changes in priority or you got a bad answer, you must agree that you won't ghost me. Whether it's good news, bad news, or no news, can I have your agreement? Now, here's the beauty of this, Dave. They almost always agree. Then when you text them, if they ghost you could say, is this what we talked about?
Welcome to the Business Builders Playbook, the show that breaks down the systems and strategies behind predictable revenue growth to win in business. In each episode, we're diving into the proven strategies that separate the winners who scale from the losers who fail. This show is sponsored by BDR.ai, the AI-powered business development platform that automates your outbound prospecting so you can focus in on closing deals instead of chasing leads. Let's get started. All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is David Bush, and I get a chance to be your host and moderator today on this exciting topic of the 7 proven strategies to avoid stagnant revenue growth. Are you feeling that? Can you feel a little bit of that pain right now? Maybe you're struggling with stagnant revenue growth, or maybe there's some other challenges that you're dealing with. But in this particular event, my friend Rich Chiarello is going to address the number one fear of the modern CEO, CRO, or senior executive, hitting a revenue ceiling. You're going to discover the 7 core strategies to diagnose why your growth is stalled and how to implement a systematic hiring and onboarding process that ensures that your sales team consistently hits their targets, regardless of the economic environment. Can I hear a hallelujah, amen on that one, right? This is something that everybody has probably had at some point in their career dealt with, if it's not right now. Rich Chiarello is a sales leadership strategist at Sandler Training. He partners with presidents and CEOs to build high-performance sales cultures that drive predictable revenue growth and market share dominance. And he's been doing it for almost 2 decades. And what we did is we basically took all of the registrants. Thanks so much for everybody that showed interest. We were blown away by the number of people that were interested and registered for this particular webinar. We know we're hitting on a hot topic. And these questions that I'm going to be asking of Rich are really going to be the solutions that are going to lead you to a better quarter, a better year, and hopefully keeping you on the revenue rise so that you're never hitting another revenue plateau. So Rich, I'm excited to get this thing kicked off. Thanks for being with us today.
Hey, happy to be here. Look, based upon the attendance, I think we picked the right topic.
Absolutely. Well, I know that we had a lot of questions come in, and we may not get to all of them. So thanks everybody for submitting a question. We want to honor those people that chose to be here with us live. If you have a question, go ahead and put it into the chat. We'll try to get to that as we navigate through these different questions that have been submitted to us prior to the kickoff of the event, but would love to end up getting as many questions answered. So without further ado, Rich, let's just jump in. And first, let's get a bit of a background. You've been doing this for almost 2 decades. You've got a tremendous amount of experience in building peak performance sales cultures. Talk a little bit more about what has brought you to where you are today and why you're so passionate about having revenue leaders to scale their businesses.
Well, if you've ever run global sales, as I did at, Computer Associates and Siebel Systems, Web Methods, after a while, you get tired of it being 9 o'clock in the morning somewhere every hour of the day, right? And so when I said, what do I want to do differently after doing all of that, and reclaim my life and still have fun? The thing that I always enjoyed best was training and bringing people into an organization and making them succeed as reps, managers, and heads of sales. That's what this lets me do.
Yeah. Well, you've done a fantastic job at it, and that's one of the reasons why we chose you for this particular event to answer these questions. And look like we got some more people that are joining us with us live. And if you just joined us, we'd love to see into the chat what industry you're coming in from. And also, if you're watching a recording of this, we're super excited to get your comments on this particular topic. So you can use the comments section. We'll have all of the links and resources inside of the video description and the show notes. And I would love to have anybody share this content with others that you think would benefit. So I'm going to jump right in with the first question, Rich, and that is, why do successful companies suddenly hit a revenue plateau?
Well, listen, that is the question of the day, right? So the first thing you have to do is separate facts from fiction. Is it a product issue, market issue, et cetera? I mean, that's what a rep will tell you, right? It's the product, it's this, it's that. The clearest way to separate that is, are other people buying our product? Are some salespeople stuck? Other people are being successful. And the reason my revenue is plateauing is everyone isn't selling. If indeed that's the case, which for the vast majority of companies, that's the reality. It's because we have a sales process that lets us start telling about our product too soon. And it's not a sales process that lets the rep answer three basic questions before they spend too much time. I bet you want to know what those three questions are, right?
I'm chomping at the bit, man. Let us have it.
Why, Mr. Prospect, why do you need to do anything? Number two, why would you do it with us? And number three, why would you do it now? And as we look at most deals that get forecasted and don't happen and get rolled out, it's good news, bad news. Good news is if we ever buy something like your solution, we're going to buy it with you. Bad news is we don't have the funding. It's not a high priority, maybe next year, right? And so that's the problem that a good sales process needs to solve.
You've had a tremendous amount of experience in really helping organizations to find the bottleneck in the sales process and helping them to really unkink the hose where there may be a blind spot or something that they just haven't, they've just overseen it or they've missed it. Can you talk a little bit about the sales process and how you're helping revenue leaders to identify those bottlenecks and kinks in the hose?
Sure. It's always best to exemplify this concept of sales templating or gateways. So in other words, if you have 7 steps in your sales process, right, to go from qualified to forecast or to go from marketing lead to qualified, you should have established steps that aren't arbitrary. So for example, if the rep has not answered the question, what's the decision process, who's involved, how will this be justified, where will we get the money? Then the idea of doing a proof of concept as your next step is ridiculous. All you're going to do is invest more time and effort, and it shouldn't be something where everyone can have their own sales process, they could pull that trigger. And so the best companies, right, the best practice in that area is having a sales template that basically has gateways that says, here's what must be accomplished before we move it to the next step. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that is something that, many individuals are dealing with right now is that they're trying to move that process into a free-flowing environment. And what do you think some of the challenges are with that? I mean, why do you think that successful organizations are still dealing with bottlenecks? Is it through just abdication? They don't want to deal with the problem behind the problem, or just curious?
Well, it's because things change, right? What worked 5 years ago when you were the only one in the marketplace and people were coming to you, now you have 7 or other competitors, right? And so what worked in the past doesn't always work in the future, in the current. The inability to sense that and change it makes people all of a sudden have this stagnant revenue. What happened? We're doing everything we did 5 years ago. Now all of a sudden it's not working.
Mhm. Yeah. But you've got 7 specific strategies to restart stagnant revenue. You mind just walking us through what those strategies are?
Sure. Let me just go through. I'll give the 7 so we make sure we get them continuous. And then we go back and ask me questions about every one of them. So the first one starts with a great story. When I was head of sales at CA, we would have great sports legends, basketball, hockey, you name it, golf, come and be our guest speakers. And of course, since I was the head of sales, I got to eat dinner with them and spend 3 or 4 hours. And whenever I would ask them, what made them so great, whether it was Larry Bird, or Tiger Woods, they had said something that sounded the same, which was a combination of I practiced my technique and make sure I had the best technique and had coaches do it. I did the behaviors that basically said, now that I know the best technique, I'm not only going to practice it, but I'm going to look at game films and everything to make sure that in real life I actually use it. And the last one was the attitude. Every one of them thought they could either score on or putt from 40 and make it sink. Every one of them believed that they could do it. And so those 3 things, your behavior, your attitude, and the technique, that's the number one, recommitting to measuring leading indicators and behavior metrics as opposed to the ending result, which is revenue.
Yeah.
Right. So number one, recommit to leading indicators and behavior metrics.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sounds pretty simple. Anything that's a common obstacle just to get back to some of those basics?
Right, because everyone gets paid on revenue. So see, you're focused a lot on what are we going to forecast this quarter. Well,
Mm.
What you're going to forecast this quarter is there or not because of something you did in most large sales cycles 2 or 3 quarters before,
Yeah.
right? So if you focus on the leading behaviors of, am I calling on qualified people? Am I only doing proof of concepts with people who have answered the questions? Have I justified this deal for the decision step and pain, etc.? If you're doing all those leading behaviors so you don't waste time with people that you should be dropping, then what am I going to forecast this quarter becomes a more happy story.
So if this show is resonating with you and you're ready to take action because you want to scale your business faster, smarter, with more AI and technology and less labor, check out BDR.ai. We help entrepreneurs and executive sales leaders to automate the grind of prospecting so you can focus your time on closing deals and growing revenue where you should be spending your time. With AI-powered data, digital outreach automation, and done-for-you prospecting systems, you'll connect with more qualified leads, book more appointments, and build predictable revenue without adding more hours to your week or the week of your staff. Visit BDR today and discover how our AI Prospect Finder and digital BDR agents can help you to build your pipeline and your profits. Visit BDR.ai, where business builders learn how to automate and scale their playbook. Yeah, and I would say that there's probably something to be said about top performers who maybe don't have the right attitude, don't have the right behaviors, and they're not willing to go back and review their technique. They just, they're professional know-it-alls, and because they've been a top performer, it's hard to coach them to that next level. So, I mean, again, that's pretty simple strategy for number one, but is there anything that you could provide some experience or maybe a story of an organization who maybe had to make the hard decision and say, if the team's not moving forward and we're stagnant, we may end up having to go backwards before we go forwards?
Well, listen, that's a very good point. I teach my sales management class. The first thing I tell them when you look at someone who isn't doing what he or she needs to do is you have to decide, is it because they're unwilling or unable? If I teach you how to prospect, if I teach you how to ask for, introductions to other customers from someone, and you've got that technique down great, you're no longer unable. But if you don't do it because you think that's beyond you, you've been selling so long, why should I need to prospect? You're now unwilling, right? How you manage someone who is unwilling is completely, harder and different than unable. But at the end of the day, sales managers and CROs are only successful based upon the team's revenue. If someone won't do what needs to be done because they either can't do it or refuse to do it, then their value diminishes and needs to be replaced. And look, we've all managed people like that. They take up a considerable amount of our time and effort, getting very little results and taking us away from the other people who are willing to do whatever you want them to do.
Yeah, and a lot of times that decision comes down to what is hard right now and then what is going to be hard 5 years from now, which is going to be if you don't make the hard decision now, then it's just going to be hard for the next 5 years, and you're going to probably be stuck and have declining revenue, and you're going to wash out your culture. So there's a lot of packed into just attitude or recommitting to attitude, behavior, and techniques. What's number 2 on the strategies?
So number 2 is really tighten the qualification standards. The customer's journey today is much different than it was 5, 10 years ago. On average, customers do 60% of the discovery of who's out there who offers a solution in the area that they're looking for, and then approach our sales team with, you made the cut of 1 of 5. Here's the technical things we want to know if you can do this. So immediately you're putting the salesperson into let me tell you all about my goods, right? And there's no need there's a need, but there's no effort or ability in their minds to understand what's the problem we're solving. Is this going to be a good use of my time? Just because you're a Fortune 500 company, if this is a big waste of my time for qualification reasons, why would I want to engage with you? So number 2 is tighten qualification standards. And in Sandler parlance, it means 3 things. 1, qualify for pain, but most importantly, not just business pain, personal pain. What would be this person's motivation to go fight for the money for my solution if I win this deal? Number 2, how will we fund it? When will that happen? Where will it come from? And then number 3, who else other than this person is involved in the decision process? Those 3 things make up point number 2.
Yeah, my goodness. I'm trying to type it all down here to put the notes into the chat for everybody. That's solid. Who else is involved in the decision making? Um, so that's fantastic. So when we look at the tightening of qualification standards, how's that typically rolled out in best practices? Is it digital? Is it digital plus verbal plus visual? I mean, do you have a standard process or operating procedure for that?
Yes, you have to teach the salespeople to be inquisitive and to hold back on the knowledge. We train them so much on our technology and our products and our competitors, but then in the initial part of the sales cycle, holding that back, you almost be better if you knew nothing about the product, right? And so trying to understand, even if you got an RFP, trying to understand what's the problem you're trying to solve. How does this compare? Is this the top problem for the company or the fifth? Is it your personal problem and therefore won't get funded because other people are ahead of you? Getting into conversations. And here's the key thing that is really sort of the silver bullet, I'd say one of the big takeaways from today. If you ask your salesperson, anyone on this phone today, you ask them what's their value prop to the customer, they will most likely tell you it's their knowledge of your solution and of the industry and how your product does blah, blah, blah better than others. That would be the wrong answer. Just imagine you're selling a security product to someone who's been a CSO forever, right? You're never going to compete with them on that level. Your salesperson's real value prop is the knowledge of the sales process today and what it will take for this prospect to buy anything from anyone. If you believe that, then very early in the sales cycle, even if they've come to you saying, set up a demo, I want to see your technical 1, 2, 3. See, look, just out of curiosity, when was the last time you personally bought anything at this company in the last year, last 3 years? 90% of the time, it will be they haven't purchased anything of that magnitude at this company. Would it help if I share with you what I'm experiencing out there in the market that says whether you pick me or someone else, here's all the things that you're going to have in place? Because remember, the last thing you want to do is a prospect is to get your whole team excited about some new technology or new solution and then find out that it's not going to be approved and not brought in.
Mm.
And then you're able to lead them. We're going to have to find a way to justify it. We're going to have to understand who else needs to be involved in the decision and what wins are they. So you can imagine how the rest of that conversation goes. But teaching sales reps how to interject that early on as a value added that they bring is really an important first step.
Yeah, I know that this is something that a lot of viewers right now are thinking about is what is that question that's simplified to really I identify and qualify for business and personal pain? Do you have something in your bag of strategies that you pull out and you go, hey, if when you ask this question, it uncovers the pain?
Well, it depends on what the solution is, right? But typically, you'll start off with, like, if I was selling sales training, right? I'm going to start off with, hey, customers typically come to me because they're, you know, struggling with being able to build a pipeline, or they're challenged by being able to close their forecast. Or three, maybe what they're finding is, they're seeing sales reps just have a drop in productivity. Which of those are an issue for you? My 30-second commercial doesn't say the things that I do, it says the problems that I solve. You want to identify the problem they're trying to solve early on and ask them questions like on the budget side, how long has this been a problem? What have you done to fix it? Do you have any idea how much this is costing the company? What's the worst that could happen if you don't fix it?
Hmm.
And then you can go right from business pain into personal pain with, gee, Dave, you seem to know a lot about this. Let me ask you a question. How is this tied to your personal gains? I mean, is this like number one? Have you been asked to fix it, or have you just been asked to go out and see who's got solutions? And here's the beautiful thing. If you've got personal pain, you can't hide it. If you've been told to fix it, if this problem happens again, you're gone. You'll start squealing and you'll see visibly, yes, I have to fix this. It's been a problem forever. I've been told, get a solution in place. And once you just keep asking them more and more about that personal pain and how it's affecting them personally, they'll tell you. Personal pain is like waterboarding. If you get the person who has the personal pain, you ask them a few questions and let them talk about it 5, 10, 15 minutes, they'll tell you anything else you want to know about. Where will we fund it? Who's it? What's the buying process like? Who else might be involved in the decision? But you can't ask those other questions. until you're talking to the person who has the personal pain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm probably seeing a lot of other nodding heads right there going, absolutely. I remember the 6 questions or the 6 words that I never wanted to forget, and that was ask questions skillfully and listen carefully, because it's not about a matter of the features and benefits that you tell people. It's more about the questions you ask and the information that they give you before you decide to deliver. So we're into these 7 strategies to break free from stagnant revenue growth. And we could probably just end the webinar now and go to work, but you've got, 5 more. So let's go into number 3. What's number 3?
Number three is this concept of reinforcing contracts. So in Sandler, we have this technique, and those on the call have been in Sandler classes know we're famous for these upfront contracts. So when I start every meeting, it starts with, here's what I want to accomplish, here's what you want to accomplish. And look, if it turns out that after you see our presentation, we're not a fit, will you tell me so? Ask for the no. On the other hand, if it turns out we are a fit, then we'll decide what to go next. But here's the thing, the last thing I want to do is have this call end with you being concerned about hurting my feelings and telling me I'll get back to you, whatever, because that doesn't do anything. So at each step of the sales cycle, you put in there the thing you're most afraid of happening. For example, ghosting. Is there a CRO on this call or salesperson who hasn't forecasted a deal, and then when you're asked by management to go ask the customer where it stands and when it will close, has that customer go into the witness protection program, right? All of a sudden, they don't return your calls. All of a sudden, they don't return emails or texts, and you're standing there telling people, they won't return my call or won't return my call, right? And so the number one thing you have to do is let them know before you get to that point. If at any point this changes in priority or you got a bad answer, you must agree that you won't ghost me. Whether it's good news, bad news, or no news, can I have your agreement? Now, here's the beauty of this, Dave. When you ask people ahead of time, can we agree that you won't do something bad? They almost always agree. Then when you text them, if they ghost you could say, is this what we talked about? And it's amazing how their guilt conscience has them come out and say, oh yeah, I should have let you know, blah, 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 blah. That makes sense?
Absolutely. I love the giving people permission to give you bad news, because that opens up the gateway. And once you
Right.
come to that agreement, now you're going to end up getting them, and that's really solid. So moving on to number 4, we're keeping this party moving. So what's number 4?
Sure. So you want to coach around pain discovery. Well, there's all sorts of AI tools out there. Matter of fact, one of the questions submitted ahead of time was, how could AI be used? Look, I'm Sandler. So we have a Sandler AI coaching product that you can practice with, and it will basically tell you at the end of the call, did you, against the AI body that you create, right? It's like talking to a real person. You can make this person be whoever you want. But then as a salesperson, I can go back and look to see, did I really uncover pain? Did I talk too much? Did I get personal pain and not business pain? And because there's just not enough time in the day for sales leaders to do that with every one of their salespeople. So once you teach them what to do, having them have the ability to practice with an AI coach is really important.
I love that. I love the
Coaching around pain discovery is number 4.
Good deal. I love the immediate feedback that AI provides to us and gives us that framework, because it's oftentimes a blind spot for people. Uh, I know that I've been guilty of talking too much, and I need to shut up and listen, and I need to not get into filling the void with more noise and more words. And so I love the feedback there, where you're getting a chance to really look at and go, how good of a job did you do in asking those discovery questions? So moving on to number 5.
So shorten the sales cycle by clarifying decision processes. Many times our inside salespeople who we're working with, even when they like us and it looks like they want to recommend us, right? They'll tell you what they think the decision process will be and the procurement process and the timing, but they don't really know. So again, part of that, your biggest value is that you understand that today these things can go on forever. If they tell you, here's what the decision process is and the timing who'd be involved, you ask them, could you do me a favor? Give them homework. Could you go back and verify? say that you're looking at this solution. If we pick it, it's going to be X amount of money. It's either budgeted, not budgeted. We're replacing something else, so the expense is equal, whatever the thing is. Then you go back and verify what that decision process will look like. Because otherwise, you're just taking their word for it. It's not that they're intentionally trying to mislead you, but they turn out to be wrong. The net effect is the same, which is a bad net effect. So
Yeah.
shorten that sales cycle by getting clarification on the decision process where they go back and verify it is number 5.
So would you say that clarifying would just be kind of a, this is what I heard you say in regards to the process. You're just reiterating what was been told to you, and then you're
And you're asking them to go back and check within their company, unless you're talking to the CEO of the company, right?
yeah,
Hey, let me go back and check to my boss who checks with another boss and make sure that what I'm telling the sales guy is true.
absolutely great. Well, let's land the plane on 6 and 7. What do we got for 6?
So 6 is pruning the dead pipeline, right? So I know it's hard to get rid of pipeline that's dead because as a salesperson, they're like, then I don't have anything in my pipeline. But the amount of time wasted and phony sense of security over keeping deals that you've now discovered, maybe they were qualified once, but right now they're not qualified based upon the last demo, discovery, whatever. Prune it, free up the salesperson's time to move on so that we're not having a bunch of stuff roll from quarter to quarter is number 6.
Yeah, and what would be the time frame? Just kind of curious of your professional experience. What's the time frame that you give for no answers or ghosting before you prune that pipeline up?
Well, depending on the size of the deal and, whether the person, is away on vacation or is waiting to talk to his manager. But when they're ghosting like that, typically what I would do is email them and first and say, is this your way of saying it's over? It's the breakup email,
Hmm.
right? Is this your way of saying it's over? If it is, that's okay. We'll still be friends. Just let me know, right? Um, but even better to make sure that something hasn't happened. And this is a true story. This actually happened once where I told the person at this very large software company, write them an email that sounds like this. Hey, Rich, I'm concerned that you're okay. You've been so reciprocal and so easy to communicate with during the sales cycle. Now, here it's been 2 weeks. You haven't returned an email. Please just let me know that you're okay. And then we can figure out how to pick up this thing later on. Well, that always typically instills so much guilt. They've replied right away. Matter of fact, I told this woman to do it at the largest software company in the world when I was teaching over in England. She liked the idea so much, she did it in the middle of my class. And 5 minutes later, she raised a hand and said, the SOB just returned my email. He said, oh, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad, blah, 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 blah. And so that was the other thing I would do. Look, if they're not responding in 2 or 3 weeks, that's their way of, and you have no one else to talk to but just this one person, it's not happening.
Yeah. I love the phrase that says, if you need them, you can't lead them. And so, if you really want to be leading your clients and be seen as, the boat that the fish are chasing, send the breakup email, send the off the hook message, and move on and go fill up your pipeline with more conversations so that people actually become attracted to the fact that you're actually moving forward and doing business with some of their competitors. So, well, let's talk it through number 7.
So 7 comes into this accountability and prospecting. So I haven't met a company yet, no matter how hot their product is, where they can live just off of inbound, even if they're using BDRs and SDRs, right? If I'm a salesperson, I'm coin operated, I'm motivated by money, I'm supplementing anything else the company's doing with finding ways to get into new accounts or sell more of the product. And so, unfortunately, that's 2 out of every 10 sales reps. And so I could tell you account after account where what we did was inspect. Remember those leading behaviors? How many we create a prospecting cookbook. It varies by company, but this one company I'm thinking of, I don't mention their name. One was each week have one meeting with a reseller where all you're going to talk about is where else can we bring our solution. You've got a bunch of customers installed. Each week you're going to ask 2 of them who else they know in the industry in your area, that they can introduce you to, that it might be a good fit. So you could imagine. And then you hold them accountable for those behaviors. If they do the behaviors, then the increased new account pipeline will develop. And so having a system where you're inspecting that and holding them accountable for doing those behaviors invariably will make the thing improve.
So accountability and prospecting. So we talked about some of the core factors. Number one was attitude, behavior, and technique, making sure that there's some. You called it reviewing the core fundamentals. Is that what you said?
Right.
Then we got tighten qualification standards, qualify for business and personal pain, how we fund it, who else is involved, getting those leveled up, reinforcing contracts, recapping outcomes. What are you the most afraid of? Giving prospects permission to give you bad news. Number four was coach around pain discovery. Number five, clarifying decision processes and timing and asking them to verify it. Pruning up dead pipeline. And then number seven, accountability and prospecting. I'd love to see any questions or comments from those that are live here with us. What was the number one thing that you took away from those seven strategies? Not the number one, but the best takeaway. What was the aha moment? I love the one about reinforcing contracts and recapping outcomes and giving people permission. I sometimes forget about that. I think it was Patrick Lencioni that said sometimes we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Sometimes it's just that great reminder of something that we've heard before, but we haven't implemented it or we haven't put it into our standard operating procedure. So thanks so much for sharing that. That's great content. So let's move on and talk about how do you hire sales reps who can actually sell in today's environment?
Well, we all know stories of people who had a great track record. We checked out their background. We brought them into our company. They didn't do well. They left somewhere else and did well again. And unless you think as the manager you're the problem, you scratch your head and say, "Yeah, how could that happen?" And so the key thing is understanding, separate from their background, is what they're going to sell, to who they're going to sell, in the volumes, whether it's transactional or enterprise, etc. Is this something they've done in the past? And I always recommend to everybody, not just role playing during the interview, but use an assessment. And we have like 4 or 5 different vendors that we use, right? Because what you need is someone to prospect. No one's going to apply for a job if you ask them about prospecting, say, "Yeah, I hate it," right? So if you use these hiring assessments, they really can let you know the strengths and weaknesses, and you can have a meaningful conversation about what areas that you would need to coach versus come, with the package. But making sure that you're really looking at, can this person sell this product in today's market in the volumes or size deals that I need? And is there any demonstrable proof that they've done that in the past? Really solves a lot of problems.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of like descriptors or questions that you're asking now about AI and just making sure that there's some basic fundamental knowledge of using AI? Is that becoming more and more popular in your world?
Well, yes, but in the interviewing, you got to be a little more clever, right? So if you ask a rep during the interview, "So how do you use AI today?" Well, "Oh, you just gave them a cue, right? Oh, I use it everywhere. You know, I use it to tell me what TV to watch. I use it to tell me what sports teams to bet on." Then I have them describe, "Talk to me today about what your week looks like. Show me your planner." How That's how you'll be able to see if there's any time put aside for prospecting already, right? And then, well, how do you go about finding new accounts? Don't lead them with how to use AI to do it. Let them tell you, "I use AI, I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT. Here's how I use it. Here's how I morph my letters and intros so that they're meaningful," right? As opposed to leading the witness too much.
Hmm. Now, one of the questions that was submitted by one of the registrants was one or two levers to get reps to be more accountable, think better, plan better, and execute better. Um, any specific levers or levers that would jump out at you as being something that really helps to increase productivity?
Sure. Well, look, like any type of coaching or counseling, no behavior changes until the person admits something, right? So the first thing you got to do as a manager is have a call with them and say, "Listen, you're making half of what you used to make a year or 2 years ago, right? Everybody else is selling, so it's not a product issue, right? Um, are you still motivated by money, right?" And if they say yes, blah, 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 it says, "Listen, as your manager, I'm willing to invest my time and effort. That's so you can hold me accountable for giving you some direction on how to increase your revenue. But then you have to be accountable for doing what we both agreed you would do." Once you have that accountability and they admit, "Yes, I want to make more money. Yes, for whatever reason, it's not happening. But if we put a plan in place to hold it accountable," then you set up, whether it's once a week or whatever, regular accountability calls, and you come up with a new behavior. Remember, it's leading indicators. Your coaching can't be go sell more deals. If I could sell more deals on my own, I would do that. The coaching may be, here's the prospecting plan, or here's how you're going to do a better job of qualifying. And you're going to do it with these 3 or 4 calls. And then, we're going to meet next week, and you're going to tell me how the 3 meetings with the 3 resellers went, and we'll perfect the process, and we'll talk about, new opportunities you identified. If that was in their cookbook as an example. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, another question from one of the participants was relating back to staying motivated or keeping reps motivated when there is a silence or there is a bit of a ghosting, whether it's actually because there's a lack of interest or there's just a reality that there's moving parts and lots of decision makers, decision by committee. Any specific tactics or strategies that you recommend around motivation and mindset? Just to keep reps staying in the mood to continue to do the things that are the seed planting and the prospecting that are going to lead to those opportunities when things are a little bit quiet?
I can tell you, nothing has changed from when I was a sales rep. Of course, it was 170 years ago to today, which is the best antidote for people who you think are wasting your time or not treating you as equal is to have so many other people to talk to that you cannot worry about,
Mm.
right? If you only have 1 or 2 deals and not returning your calls, man, you don't sleep at night. Life is horrible. Every time your boss calls, you're afraid to pick up the call. And so the best antidote is to have a behavior of prospecting where you are so tough on qualifying deals that if they disengage or won't do everything else, you don't feel that bad because you have so many other people to talk to. The reverse of that is I have no one else to talk to. I have no other chance at revenue. This is my only deal I'm working on, right? And that's like a death spiral.
Mm. Yeah, another common theme, many people that registered asked the question around how do you get your percentages up with phone calls and emails, and how do you get your response rate, email and phone calls to go up? Um, what are some of your best practices to increase response rates?
Well, it's depending on the volume of calls that you're making, right? So there's 2 things. Number one, everyone uses LinkedIn. You're much better off asking someone who if they can make an introduction to someone you want to talk to. That increases your chances of them taking a phone call. It might be a cold call, but you'll get the conversation. And so that increases it 100-fold, and people should be doing that. The next thing is that you have to be persistent. And we have something in Sandler called the no pressure sales call, right? The last thing you or I want to do is to get a phone call from someone that sounds like we always get, which is, hey, I'm Rich from Acme Plumbing. We've got pipes. We've got this. We've got this. I'm so glad I got you on the phone. Don't hang up. I'm going to talk really fast because I know you're going to hang up any second. Right? So and I can't go through a whole no pressure sales call, but I'm happy to follow up whoever asked that question separately, in a call. But, it goes something more like this. You have to start with a pattern interim. Hey, Dave, I'm with Sandler Training. Have you heard of us? And when they say yes or no, that's a pattern interim. Well, listen, that's okay. Just tell you why I'm calling you. You decide if we continue. I work with folks like yourself who are struggling with X and challenged by Y and maybe overcome by, Z. Are those issues for you? As quickly as you can make it not about you and into, do you have any of these problems, and get them talking about the problems. If they're still on the phone and talking to you, the rest of the conversation is all about that. If you want to ensure a loud hang up, start yakking about your product and company and how great it is and everything else, and you'll just get hung up with it. You take that same thing and put it into emails. But emails are a lot harder today because of the numbers that people are getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that really just separating the right fit from the presentation, making sure that it is a good match to have that conversation. I'm assuming that that's a strategy that many people need to apply into their world before they get into the presentation mode. I know that, with inside of LinkedIn, I just saw a post the other day that said, how to do LinkedIn wrong. Talk about yourself in your first message, right? It's just that. Unfortunately, that's still true for a lot of experienced sellers is that they're short on time. They don't want to spend a lot of time building the relationship. They just want to know if the person's interested in their services. And I don't know what your strategy is and how you would train or coach a sales rep, but Would you say that there is still a bit of the Ford or form acronym that's, talking about relationships, talking about mutual connections and building rapport before you get into the details?
Well, yeah, I think it comes from two things. One, if someone's in their 20s or 30s today, they didn't grow up as a conversationalist. They grew up using partial words and emojis, right? And so they probably couldn't have a meaningful conversation with their best friend or brother, right? So now you're asking them to get on a phone and have a conversation with a stranger, right? That is open ended and friendly and makes the person feel comfortable about talking and not be a threat. So that's why that attitude part is so important. That in my mindset, that this is what I'm going to do. I don't mean to be a knowledge expert. I want to be a conversational expert. And then as quickly as possible, getting them to talk, right? And so that younger generation, I mean, I know a lot of my CRO customers are using ChatGPT just to make sure that that younger generation writes coherent emails to people. You know, so that the email doesn't look like it was done by, a fourth grader. But
Mm.
that whole mindset of being able to hold back on the knowledge. And I guess the best analogy I would use, it's okay, just like a medical doctor, to learn all about your products, all about your industry, learn all about that. But when I go see a doctor, I want them to ask me questions that are diagnostics. And then based upon my answer to the first question, they use the knowledge to ask me the next question. Right. And so use your knowledge like a doctor uses it to diagnose a patient. Right. But you'll scare the heck out of the patient if all of a sudden you start telling them about his heart and his coronary and everything else. Right. And they'll go running out of the room. Well, that's what we do figuratively right on the phone with the prospect when we start talking about us and our company.
Mhm. Let's move on to talk a little bit more about sales leadership. So, what do you think is the sales leader's role in the current modern sales management era?
Well, at the end of the day, they're responsible for bringing in the revenue from a group of people, right? Um, so whenever I ran sales, I said, here's what you're based on. Number one, bringing in the revenue. Number two, your ability to be promoted to second level revenue leader, et cetera, is your ability to hire people that can move up in the company. After those two things, if you did those two things right, you know, short of doing something dishonest or unethical, anything number three or four is really, really secondary. And so those are the two things that make someone most powerful. I mean, if you're a sales leader today, you're being interviewed to be the head of sales somewhere else with either a bigger company or with more people underneath you, or maybe you're going from a North American lead and you're being interviewed to run all the world, you're going to want that CEO's making that decision to hear from people who know you. Hey, David does two things really well. Number one, if he gives you a forecast, he's going to make it. And number two, the people he hires, he's going to bring in people that are not only talented, but he's going to coach them and morph them he's not afraid of hiring someone who could take his job because he expects to be out of that job and moving upward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Is there any common barriers or obstacles that you're seeing inside of traditional sales leadership right now that you think need to be identified and kind of opened up as like a blind spot in sales leadership?
Um, well, look, the most common one that hasn't changed for decades is you look at someone who is a great individual contributor, always making their numbers, and you say, great, we'll put him in charge of the team. Everything that made that person great as an individual contributor dooms them to failure, right, by now being a manager. They try to do it all themselves. There's no coaching. They're going to try to close every deal themselves. They're going to micromanage everyone, right? And so that movement from being a individual contributor to a great team leader is really one that people can make, but you have to make sure that that's what the person wants. If they understand that their role is going to be successful through others, right? And that they're going to hire people who they can coach, maybe show you how to do it once, second time I'm there, just to make sure you don't hurt yourself, third time you're on your own. Have that type of mentality of leadership and not, I'm going to do this all by myself till my head explodes.
Right. And you've talked a lot about the ideas of, really shifting into predictable forecasting and generating predictable results by having structures and systems in place. So, how do you move from, hope-based forecasting to predictable results? You have a one, two, three on that, or a process?
Forecasting accuracy varies based upon your average deal size, right? So the good news is if you're in a low average sales price or lower average sales price but higher volume, the more transactions you have, the more likely it is that you're going to come to a mean of, hey, every month you look at history and say, hey, every month we have $3 million worth of these deals that my guys are forecasting. We seem to only bring in, for whatever reason, 2.4, 2.5. That's where I'm comfortable, right? Can't tell you which of the deals are going to happen or not happen, but I have enough transactions that I can look at, right? And create something other than just gut feel. For those of us that aren't that lucky, and especially if you have a couple of monster deals, right? You have to keep those monster deals somewhat outside of the forecast and say, look, here's my forecast. That's what I used to do. You know, it's going to be X million. I'm working on this other deal that's 40 million, 50 million. I'm not trying to hide it, but here's the reason why it can't be forecasted right now. And here's what I'm doing to try to bring it in, right? And that's the best way how you want to position it as opposed to putting it in, right? And so those are sort of the best practices. The other thing, especially in the larger deals, is in your sales process. You want to have a step that says, let's say this one customer I do work with, if the deal is over $500,000 ARR, when it goes into qualified, the sales rep must set up a call with me as the sales manager and the person he's dealing with his boss, right? No one's thinking about bringing in a new vendor without wanting to talk to them, right? And if all of a sudden you get, oh no, you can't talk to my boss, it's because the boss has no idea what you're doing, right? The boss has no idea you're looking at this, right? And that does two things. It lets you as the sales leader be engaged with that person at the customer at a management level before it's the end of the month, end of the quarter when you're trying to squeeze them. Establish some relationship. And then later on, do a checks and balance that says, hey, are we still on track to close it? If not, let me know. How important forecasting is. So that executive leadership step has to be in that sales template.
Good. Well, I know we've kind of battered around a little bit the concept of using AI to accelerate revenue, and that could be a whole nother session just on that one topic. So, any top strategies, best practices that you're seeing that um, organizations that are on the growth side of revenue are beginning to adopt as a common practice?
Well, there's literally, I just saw a report today that it looked like there were 60 different AI-based companies designed to help salespeople. So the biggest challenge is trying to know them. But I've had customers, like I said, who use AI for coaching. I've had customers who use AI within their CRM. So Sandler has a product within your CRM. It will learn based upon the steps that have been completed and not completed, and whether it closes or not. It will learn whether you should be forecasting the deal or not, and based upon all the deals in your pipeline at all the different stages. If I were AI forecasting, this is the number I would pick. So there's tools in the forecasting. Other customers I have use tools that actually listen to the recording of an actual call and come back and use AI to say, here's what you did right or wrong, and you didn't get to it. So where coaching tool helps you before you make the call, there's other tools that do it after it. Look, I'm not exactly a youngster in this, but I use AI and trying to figure out how to relate Sandler to people before I reach out to them. So using that to do the research before a phone call, before an email, there's just no end in sight for how many places you could use it.
Yeah. Well, I got two more questions for you, Rich, and then we'll put a nice bow on this thing. But the next question is, how can you create a prospect sense of urgency in deals?
Well, the prospect sense of urgency has to be there that you uncover, right? So you can't go in where there's no urgency, and unless you're going to kidnap one of their family members, right, or take their pet dog hostage, you can't create it. Think of it this way: if I was selling tires, the absolute best time for me to cold call someone would be when they got a flat on their way to work. And now they're at the office and all this personal pain. Supposed to get home, take my daughter to soccer practice. What am I going to do? Phone picks up. It's Rich from Acme Tires. Hey, listen, we sell tires. You sell tires. I can't believe you called me. I didn't know what to do, right? So I'm not creating that. I'm just arriving at the absolute perfect time. So what good salespeople do is they uncover people through prospecting who they could move to, hey, your tires, not flat now, but I looked at them. They're pretty tread wear. Imagine if it happened on a day you had to do X, Y, and Z. And so it's that personal pain that I get you into. And especially in the technology world where the people who are technologists are risk aware, risk avoidant. The trick is you convince them that inaction is more risky than taking action. You convince them that if this flows up and you don't fix it, who's going to take the fall for that, right? And isn't it more likely, let's say you're selling security products, isn't it more likely that you're going to be hacked into and that someone's going to say, how can we allow this to happen? Isn't that a worse scenario than you buying my solution to prevent it from happening? Right? And so that personal pain and being able to have an expertise in how to use it, that's where the sense of urgency comes from. And you have to be honest with yourself to say, right now, there's no way to create a sense of urgency in this deal. I'm going to come back next year and I'm not going to forget about them completely, or, no way, I'm just going to drop them forever. But it doesn't mean that you're going to take every customer and basically say it's now or never. You have to use that sense of urgency as to when that will happen.
Hmm. Wow, and you've given us a tremendous amount of fire. I mean, you've given us a lot of really cool, hot answers to these questions that a lot of us are just thinking to ourselves, researching, and you've delivered the goods today. So my last question for you, Rich, is that what is it that you do for organizations, and how do people work with you? In what capacities do you help and serve and support them and their teams?
Well, the way I work with people, every customer I deal with is different, but I encourage everyone to just take a phone call where all I'm going to do is listen, right? Just like your salespeople. How can I try to sell you something? I have no idea what your issues are, if I can help you, if you need my or want my help, right? But that first conversation where I just listen to where you are and I ask you a very simple question. If you could change one thing about your current sales results right now, what would it be? Right? And if everything's perfect, great, go away. And then, nice to meet you as a friend. But we start with just trying to understand if there's a problem, and if so, how it's affecting the business and how it affects the person. So that first call where we just have a conversation is how it starts. And then out of that, everybody has a different fixed plan that they need based upon their priorities. There is no one size fits all.
Mm. And as far as more details or information, we're going to put the links inside the show notes and the video description for those people that are watching the recording. But any specific next steps that you could share with those people that are watching this video today?
Well, sure. For those that are on the video, and if you're listening to the video, you're going to get a link to the video and the materials, and just in case you weren't able to be on for all of it. And what I ask of you in return is, listen, I'll reach out to you and just set up, could be as short as 15 minutes. Worst case, at least we get to know each other, right? We're on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's supposed to be about networking referrals, right? And it might very well be that we have a conversation. I end it this way. The worst that could happen is you talk to someone who's been training technology companies for 20 years, and there's not a single thing that I could offer to improve your revenue. How good are you going to sleep at night, right? The next thing after that is going to be, hey, there's an issue that you didn't think that could be fixed that we could fix, right? And so if that's the case, you're going to sleep even better. You just take that call and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to close up with maybe a success story or a recent experience that you had with a business. It's a real life scenario about some of the problems or challenges that an organization was facing anonymously. We don't want to call anybody's name out. And what did you do specifically? And then what was the results that came out of that? Anything come to mind quickly?
Sure. So real quick, it's a company that was a large software company growing through acquisition. And the problem was that, I have 100 products. You're only selling 5. The next guy's selling a different 5. The next guy's selling another 7. No one's trying to sell all of them, right? Because people sell what they're familiar with. And if you're growing through acquisition, you're bringing in people from those companies. So we went to the behavior model. We taught them how to have conversations about products that they're not familiar with, because it's not about technology, it's about asking questions. We then managed the behaviors to ensure that everyone tried to sell all the products, whether they were successful or not. And long story short, their pipeline in 3 months not only increased by 60%, that's 60, but they went from the average rep selling 5 products to the average rep having 12 products in their pipeline.
Mm.
Leading indicators are the key, at least for that problem.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate your time today. Thanks everybody for watching this either live or recorded, and thanks for all the comments. We've just really appreciated the interaction from everybody. And yeah, we'll make sure that everybody has next steps, and you'll see that inside the video description. If you're watching a recording, if you registered for this webinar, we'll send you some follow-ups as well. But Rich, thank you so much for dedicating some time and for all of your expertise that you've shared with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Builders Playbook. If this episode gave you some plays that you can start running in your business today, hit subscribe and share with another revenue leader who's tired of the pipeline grind. Building predictable revenue isn't something you figure out alone. Whether you're looking to automate your prospecting with BDR.ai, or you just want to talk through the growth challenges you're facing, reach out. We help business leaders just like you to build systems that actually scale. And if you're ready to stop being your company's highest paid prospector, let's have a conversation. Reach out to us at BDR.ai. Until next time, let's keep building.